So I knew Shafilea, who is primarily known as Shaf by her friends from school. So our relationship developed when we were in college mostly, as we had lots of time in the sixth form together. We had a lot of lessons together, so it was really lovely kind of developing our relationship over a few years together. So she was really intelligent. She was genuinely really bright, really dedicated to her studies. She was always working really hard, would always put her full effort into her homework, and she had some really clear ambitions whereby she wanted to be a lawyer, and she absolutely, I have no doubt that she would have succeeded in that. So Shaf was really passionate about her studies in school. She always wanted to do well. She was passionate about her future in that she knew exactly what she wanted to do. But she was also just passionate about fashion and things that every teenage girl was passionate about at that age. Shaf had a really noticeable laugh, and she could she'd just have us all in stitches. She always used to have some common phrases as well, like often when she'd speak to us, she'd always say "in it" at the end of her sentences, and it always made us laugh. But she was just such a bubbly individual, really, and you never would have guessed that going on back at home was some really quite dark things. Shaf really liked a range of music, but more specifically R&B, rap music. That's what she was into the most. So qualities that Shaf possessed, that she was recognised for, is the fact that she was always so positive and so upbeat, regardless of anything negative that was going on at home. But also just she was someone really to look up to, really, as a role model student, and she was always hardworking. One of Shaf's favourite things to do was go shopping and buy fashionable clothes. She was very into her fashion. She always liked to look good. She was very beautiful, and she liked her makeup, and she just liked to be quite glamorous, and that's just something that she enjoyed. The thing for Shaf, she always wanted to be successful, and she had a really clear vision of what that would look like. She wanted to be a successful lawyer, and she wanted to do well in everything that she participated in. Unfortunately, she didn't really get to fulfill the achievements that she wanted to achieve. She did well on her GCSEs. That was something that I know she was proud of, but she didn't get to finish her A-levels. I think she'd want to be remembered as this really positive and uplifting individual, because so many people would have had no idea what was going on at home and the depths of the violence and the threats that she was receiving and the honour-based abuse that she was receiving on a daily basis. She'd want people to remember her by that kind of positive, uplifting attitude and the can-do attitude. She wasn't going to let anything stop her. Honour-based abuse is clearly still an ongoing problem, which is shocking in this day and age. Certainly, as a teacher myself, I know the signs to look out for of child abuse, and certainly all the different signs of child abuse, but certainly I know that honour-based abuse isn't one that is talked about. It's really important to share what happened to Shafilea, because we have to keep on talking about honour-based abuse and forced marriage, and making it known that it is a crime and it is something that should be treated very seriously, as particularly in Shaf's case, it was child abuse. It didn't kind of have that label attached to it at the time, and certainly the two things didn't seem to marry up. But honour-based abuse is child abuse, and that is what she was experiencing at that age. People need to understand that this isn't an isolated case, and the cases that we do hear about aren't in their few. There are so many instances where honour-based abuse is happening and it is going unrecognised by authorities, It isn't being reported, people aren't asking for the help. So there's so many that are suffering in silence, and it's important we acknowledge that actually it is still a really serious problem that has to be addressed and taken seriously, and action has to be taken. Sharing Shaf's story and other stories like hers is really important, because we need females and males who are suffering honour-based abuse to understand that there is a way out and there is help out there. Is really important to anyone that is experiencing honour-based abuse. They first of all need to know how they can access help, and they need to understand that it isn't normal, that it isn't part of their culture or part of their religion, it isn't something they should have to put up with. But also it's really important that organisations of all kinds, whether that be in teaching, whether that being in healthcare or social care, they need to understand the signs to look out for and how to deal with those situations without being too worried about offending somebody. Victims need to understand that there is a way out, that they don't need to suffer in silence, and they need to understand that although it can be a daunting prospect to step away from your family unit, for example, there is help, there is protection, and they need to be able to access that and be brave enough to step away and know that it will be better. Future victims need to feel reassured that authorities are going to take their claims seriously, that they are going to acknowledge that honour-based abuse is just as bad as domestic violence, that it's just as bad as any kind of child abuse. They need to feel reassured that those situations are going to be dealt with seriously. And that's something that I do think needs to change very quickly, and clear procedures have to be put in place to protect anybody that is at risk of honour-based abuse or forced marriage. What happened to Shaf and kind of how that has influenced my own life. So in my profession as a teacher, that's something I'm very hyper aware of, and very conscious that as a teacher I shouldn't just be looking out for what I would say are the obvious signs of child abuse, but that honour-based abuse is a very real thing, and it is something that I feel that I've always been conscious of, and I think all teachers should also be of the same understanding. Challenges that I've faced when raising awareness about Shaf's case is the fact that there seems to be a concern about offending certain groups of people, and from my perspective, I just don't think that anybody should feel the need to be offended unless they have something to be guilty of. I don't understand why everybody wouldn't want the same thing, which is to stop honour-based abuse and to stop forced marriage, because it is ultimately against their human rights. I'll always continue to talk about Shaf because I think her memory is so important. Firstly, because we always want to remember her in such a positive light, but also because we don't want her death to be in vain. It feels like it has to be important for something. It feels like it has to have meaning, and that meaning for us, and certainly my friends, is that we want to see that her awful ending has a positive beginning for so many others, because by using her case to raise awareness, it means that others could potentially be saved from the fate that she received. In the future, I want to be really assured that different organisations know exactly how to deal with cases of honour-based abuse and forced marriages. I want to know that clear prosecutions are in place and that victims will be supported at every single step of the way. People watching this video need to continue to spread the message that honour-based abuse and forced marriage is still very much a real thing, and we need to be taking it very seriously and putting in measures to ensure that vulnerable individuals are protected. For anybody that is suffering any kind of domestic abuse, I need them to understand that although it seems like a daunting prospect, stepping away from the people that you've always considered to be your family could be the best thing you ever do if you are experiencing honour-based abuse. I also want people to consider, if you aren't somebody that is a victim of honour-based abuse, what steps would you take to ensure that somebody who was at risk of that could receive, to make sure that they are protected, because it ultimately could save somebody's life.